Hi, guys. I'm really excited to be here. Fun fact, I got baptized in this church. I used to go to this church way back in the day. Actually, probably a lot of the youth leaders that were your youth leaders who are married now are probably people that I know. So I have a lot of amazing friends here at BP Church, and I love this church. I'm really excited to talk about leadership. Like, how did I even get to this point to even talk about leadership? I'm not like an amazing leader or something like that. I am someone who's just passionate about this topic. And part of the things that God has called me to is actually to equip leaders and to encourage. So how many of you are students that participate in the youth group? Show of hands. Okay. And how many of you guys are leading in some capacity, whether you are a youth leader, a student leader? Okay, awesome. So basically, even if you have a title or not, I'm here to affirm everyone in this room because I firmly believe that there's a leader in every chair, right? So I believe that there's a leader in every chair. So leadership is a really vast topic, but today I'm going to try my very best to just talk about only very particular things. But one of the things is when we think about leadership, we think about titles and positions, and we think about like all these fancy things, right? We're like, some people's aspirations are like, I want to have the title, therefore I will serve. I mean, let's be honest, right? It's kind of nice to tell people, well, I'm a leader, so you have power. So when we think about leadership, we think about power. We think about the ability for us to actually have a sense of like authority over an area. But leadership, when it comes to leading when you're not in charge particularly, doesn't always look that way. Because when I'm talking about leadership, I want you guys to not think of it in the very traditional sense. Because when you have power and you're like, my youth pastor gave me a title, so like, now I'm like a leader. It's like official, you know? I was one of those nerdy kids. Like, I used to serve upstairs in the children's church here at BP, and I was always like, what else can I do, you know? And even the different churches that I grew up in was like, I was always thinking about, how can I serve? How can I serve? And that is really where leadership is. Literally, this is what leadership is. It's your first yes. It's your opportunity that you can actually be less focused about what is happening inside of you, your insecurities, and actually step out and say like, no, I can actually do this. I remember when I was younger, when I was like a teenager, which feels like forever ago, but when I was a teenager, people used to always be like, you know, Gifty, like, you would probably make a great pastor. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a pastor. I want to be super rich and famous one day, like, you know, but I remember when they would always ask me to do stuff, but I realized that one of the things that really stood out to me that God taught me through growing up was that actually being faithful in your leadership. Leadership is not just about like you needing to have a title and power and position. Leadership is actually your yes about being faithful in how you serve with the little that you have. Whether it's like, okay, your job is to greet people, you do the best you can to make people feel welcomed, because guess what? You don't know the impact. Just like that video, that guy probably didn't think the impact was going to be that serious when he started dancing. He was like, whatever, I'm just going to have a good time by myself, and I don't care what anyone says. But then to see hundreds of people coming around him, and it probably made their day, let's be honest. So the thing is, are we going to be the first person that is going to jump in? And I love that Hope was talking about saying yes. But are we going to be the person that's going to say, I'm reluctant and I'm insecure, therefore I will not walk out in what I can do? I know a lot of you guys have probably gifts and talents and skills. Don't minimize them. You have an opportunity to do that. There's 3 areas of focus. I'm so sorry for those of you taking notes. I did not have slides for you today, but in leadership, a leader must focus on 3 areas, okay? There's 3 kinds of focus. The first one is inner focus. The second one is other focused. And the third one is outer focus. What is inner focus? So when it comes to leadership, it's actually really important. It doesn't matter what age you are. This is applicable to everybody. It's actually your ability to monitor your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions. That's what inner focus is. In order for you to be a good leader, you need to lead your life well, right? So which means that you need to take... I love that Paul talks about this in Romans 12. He says, take every thought captive, which means if you have a negative thought, it's so... Okay, I don't know about you guys, but when I have a negative thought and I just run with the thought, I end up in like a rabbit's trail, and then like I'm in a bad mood. Anyone else relate with that? And then you're just like, and then someone comes and they're like, don't talk to me. I'm so like, I don't want to talk to you. And then what did I do? I was just in my feelings for no reason, right? Okay, sorry. This is, my brother knows this too well. So I'm always yelling at him. But your ability to monitor your thoughts, your feelings, and emotions is really, really powerful because your thoughts can determine the life that you live. Your emotions can determine how you feel about things, and it actually allows you only act based on what you think, right? So you're like, oh, I think it's important for me to be here about leadership. So you're here. You had a thought, you should come. You came, right? Or maybe somebody dragged you. One of the two. The second one is other focused. It's actually, as a leader, you have an ability to empathize with the people around you. Your other focus, which means you're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about those around you. This is a basis basically for all relationships and teamwork. And so the first inner focus is actually the basis for intuitive and decision making. So even as a leader, if you want to make good decisions, you need to look internally and say, okay, am I thinking through things? Am I, do I have healthy, listen, I'm a firm believer in emotional intelligence. I run a emerging leaders program through a nonprofit organization for the last 10 years, and I teach on leadership through that. And one of the things that I do is I actually get them to take Myers-Briggs tests and actually sit down and work through, like, what is their personality type? And I tell everybody this. Even in the church setting and outside the church, I say you need to play on your strengths. If you know that, like, this is what your strength is, lean into that, right? That's actually the secret sauce for leadership. And so when you're inner focused, you know your strengths, you know your emotions, but you know how to manage them. And that's the difference between someone who doesn't lead their lives well and someone who does. And again, with other focused is thinking about your friends, thinking about your leaders around you, thinking about your church. Those are things that are very helpful. The last one, which is way bigger than you, is outer focus. This is your ability to understand larger forces and systems. And this is actually a basis for strategic thinking. You're probably like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? In order for you to lead well, you need to understand, you need to be able to step back and look at the bigger picture and say, oh, okay, so BP Church is here, but like this is how churches normally run. This is what I kind of want to do. Let's say, okay, in order for me, so when I was younger, I wanted to be an architect. And so I actually started, my degree program is in urban planning. My first degree is in urban planning. And so when I started doing that, I had to literally step back and say, what are the systems and the things that are going to allow me to get to where I need to go? It's far greater than me, right? So what's happening is that, just imagine there's a little circle. First it's about you, then it's about people closest to you. And then the third one is like outer focused, which is allowing you to think further. In order for you to think about all these three tiers of focus, it requires work. And as somebody who even runs a leadership program at our church, at Journey Church, some of the things that I always talk about is like just knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, so that when you're able to actually lead and serve, God can use those things. God doesn't need you to be a person that is not, like, work on what you have. Don't try to be someone that you're not. And that's what's the difference in leadership. Like, for example, there are areas that you can focus on. But I know for me, actually, I knew that I had a call. So once I stopped running from God, it's a very long story, guys. But once I was like, okay, I'm going to stop acting up, and I'm going to really just like lay down my life to Christ. And so the first thing the Lord told me was, you need to start a group for basically, so I'm Ethiopian, and so there was not a lot of, our generation, what we were doing was that people that were my age stopped coming to church and they would disappear. And they'd just be like gone. And it'd just be me left, and I'd have to watch the kids. And I'm like, this is not like, I'm trying to grow in Jesus. It's a different language. And I just told the Lord to be like, you need to start this where you do like a youth/young adults ministry. And I was so scared because I'm like, okay, I was like actually taking my walk with the Lord serious. And now you're giving me more work? Like, I'm not the one. Like, I'm not trying to do this. This is real stuff. I wrestled with this. And then I remember he was just like, I need you to pray about this. And I was like, I'm calling you to lead. And I was like, but I don't want to. Can I just sit in the corner? And this is real conversations. I talk to God like that. I should be more respectful, obviously. But So we had this conversation, and then I remember praying about it and being like, I was so scared because, I was so actively pursuing my career, and I was like, ministry, I was doing it I was doing ministry, that was my life, I was serving, but I didn't see myself as a leader that was worthy to lead other people because my inner focus, my internal life was not, I wasn't taking advantage of that and saying, God, I need you to come and transform me. Teach me what it looks like to be emotionally intelligent. Teach me how to grow in areas where I'm weak. So then I talked to this guy who's a friend of mine, childhood friend, and so our churches were split, and they were together at one point, and they split, and I was like, can I get you to pray about this? Because I really feel like I'm called to do this, but for some reason I feel like you're supposed to do this with me. And he was a friend of mine, so he's like, yeah, let's do that. So then we sat down, both of our pastors, after 6 months of praying. You see that? I was like, Lord, I'm gonna just pray about that. It took 6 months. Okay, delayed obedience, guys, is still disobedience. So we talked to our pastors, and they're like, oh, this is great. You guys are going to do something in English, something helpful. It's crazy to think that 5-6 years ago, when I started Amplified with my co-founder, I didn't know anything about leadership. I was not qualified. I was just like, okay, I've gone to BP, and I've gone to other churches that were not Ethiopian-speaking churches, and I knew what church looked like. But when it comes to leadership, I knew nothing about leadership. So I'm not trying to tell you that you need to know to start. You just start because God has called you to start, right? And then I was listening to podcasts. I didn't have a mentor in my life. I didn't have anyone to hold my hand and say, okay, this is what it looks like. And to be a woman in ministry, I said yes blindly, trembling in fear. I was scared. And I remember my parents being like, are you trying to do ministry? Or are you trying to do work? And I was like, I want to do both. Can I do both? And this is really where God actually grew me. And I made a million mistakes. I love the people at Amplified. It is now a young adults. It's about to be a church plant this September. It's a young adults ministry that has over 60. In our conferences, we have hundreds of people that come. It's nothing that I ever had expected when I first started it. And I'm not trying to say you need to have the platform. Let me tell you something. The first time I got a mentor to mentor me as a pastor, I was 26. That was the first time someone sat me down and says, this is what it looks like to be a pastor. I was like, oh, word? Okay, I was just reading the Bible, sitting before the Holy Spirit, listening to 1,000,010 podcasts, reading books, and working on myself because I said, I want to be the best person I can be. And then when I actually realized God has called me to this, I couldn't say no anymore because it was so evident, it was confirmed. And one of the things she said to me, which I will never forget, was that never run to the mic. That is the last place you want to run to as a leader. Never run for the mic because the work begins outside the doors first than it does on here on stage. So for you to earn this, it's a privilege. She wasn't trying to tell me that because I think the way I grew up was whoever had the mic had the power. I didn't think that the person that was cleaning the church had any authority. I didn't think about the person that was, dropping off meals, that was praying with people. I didn't see that. All I saw was the stage being something. But this, for me to stand here today, is a 15-year process that God had to do a lot of work in me. So what I'm trying to say is be faithful. Say yes. And when I say be faithful, that means, listen, millennials are the worst at commitments. So imagine how Gen Zs are. Probably more. More. So be faithful. Faithfulness means when you don't want to do it, you still do it, right? There's many times, because we, at Amplified, when I was there, we used to have our services on Friday nights. I would never miss a Friday night. I would be working. I used to work for a law firm, so I was working for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. Then I would go to the church and I would be working and I'd be serving. I would never miss a beat. There would be days I didn't want to work, but I had to lean on God because it was not about me. That's my point. It's not about yourself when you're serving. It's never about you. I'm sorry to say that. Newsflash. If you think leading is about you, then you're missing the point why you're leading it. You're doing it for the audience of one. So you're doing this because not only has God given you an opportunity, it's such a privilege to help people. Imagine the lives that are impacted because you said yes, right? So leadership doesn't have to be, even just you being faithful is so important. When it gets hard, stick it out, guys. When it gets hard, stick it out. Because this, every story in the Bible that I have studied, and I love that the Bible's filled with leaders. There's a lot of people's stories I can resonate with because I'm like, I have a little bit of this and that. And I realize that faithfulness is the one thing that God has taught me, that even when it's hard and I wanted to quit and I wanted to walk away, the reason why I stayed is because, not because even God told me to do it, but it's because I learned so much through serving. So to be a good leader, you need to be faithful. The second thing is you need to be a servant leader. You need to roll up your sleeves and serve alongside people. You don't get to come up to the stage. The amount of stuff that happens behind the scenes before even an event gets pulled off, there's so much. There's ways you can contribute your time, your gift, your skills. Be a servant leader. Serve well. And there's this thing that we say at our church, how you serve is how you lead. How you serve is how you lead. So if there's someone who's coming in the tech booth every week, in and out, serving, that's being faithful. That we know that we can trust them, because it's not just about putting on a production show. But I feel like I'm a firm believer there's a leader in every chair. Now, there's a lot of empty chairs in here, but it does not mean there isn't enough people to fill it. So think about people in your life that don't think they have anything to contribute. They have nothing to live for. Serving can save your life too. That's been my experience. There was a period in my life where I had walked away from the Lord and I stopped going to church, and I was very young and I had some trauma that had happened and I was really upset, and I kind of walked away from that. And then the pastors one day, before the pastors, I heard the Lord very clearly. I had this really terrible car accident, and so I was on bed rest. And so I was like, okay, now I'm like, the scariest thing for me at that time was to be left with my thoughts, because I didn't actually if you guys know what I mean, if you get carried away with your negative thoughts, you don't want to be left alone, so you do other things to soothe it. There was no Netflix at that time. Maybe there was, I just didn't have it. Anyways, I remember hearing the voice of the Lord saying, Gifty, come home. And I had never heard the voice of God or, whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to my parents' church. And so as soon as my doctor cleared me and I was able to go to church, I went to church. And the first week, I'm sitting in the congregation, and so when they're preaching and singing, it's in a different language. And I'm like, I don't understand what y'all are saying, but I'm here. God, you told me to be here. I'm here. And then I remember the next week, the pastor came up to me. He's like, I feel like you have a call on your life, and I would love it if you come and teach Sunday school for our youth one day. I looked at him and said, do you know what I do on a Saturday night? Do not give me any responsibility. I'm very ratchet. You do not want me to talk to your kids, because I don't even, and I was just like, I'm basically telling him, don't give me any responsibility. I don't want to do it. This is way before even Amplified came along. And he was like, no, I just do it once. Hey, listen, Afope will probably get you on this one. I was just going to say, that's such an Afope thing. Just do it once, I promise. Just, we need you one Sunday, just come and do it. I was like, all right, I can do one Sunday. I'm Googling how to preach. You guys, I had been out of church for years. I've been just disconnected from God. But it actually, and I'm not trying to say this method works for everybody, but I remember so clearly sitting in that room with the teenagers, and my brother was one of them, and I literally prayed with him. I said, Dear God, I don't know what I'm doing here. And the kids are like, why is she here then? And I remember being like, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but can you just come give me a heart to obey you? This was my prayer, because I didn't want to disappoint these poor kids. They were stuck with me in a room, and they know they're this one's wild. She doesn't come to church, and now she's trying to teach us. That was literally what's happening. But I remember, you guys, I will never forget that season of my life. Every Sunday at that church, I showed up. And I can tell you, it saved me from myself. It saved me from myself, because I didn't know I had such self-destructive thoughts. Coming to church and serving, even knowing that I struggled with my faith, I understood that God used actually those kids to teach me what it looks like to love God. And I was there to teach them Sunday school. Let me tell you how I taught them, okay? Please don't ever do this. Just open the Bible, go to the back. I went and I was like, forgiveness, okay. I'm struggling with forgiveness. I was like, maybe they can tell me how they forgive people. We can make this a group discussion. So I would open up scripture. But like I had never opened up my Bible until I had to teach these kids. I don't know what that pastor saw in me, but he clearly saw the call of my life. And I'm so grateful for that because he gave me an opportunity to serve. And serving saved me from myself. Lean into the culture that is here. Lean into the culture of the leaders that are here. Lean into what God could possibly use you for. You don't know what your yes is going to look like. I'm telling you, like that teenage girl that was coming in and like serving the church at that time, teaching Sunday school, not realizing like, I didn't know what I was doing. I never thought it would take me here. But I know this is where I'm called to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do. So you never know. And the last thing is cultivate an attitude of excellence. This is why I love Daniel. Daniel is my favorite person. Cultivate an attitude of excellence. When you do something, do it fully with your heart. Like, don't do it like, don't do it like, okay, I'm just going to like do half of the pie. Like, no, go all in. Because you cannot see the fruit of your faithfulness until you go all in. You must lean into the culture and go all in. So the cycle to be a great leader is one that serves well, that lives a life of excellence, that is faithful. And I mean, this is just for anyone in this room that is like, you have a lot of opinions. Listen. If you have feedback to give to your leaders, you need to be open to receiving feedback as well. Right? Because I think what happens is that we become so cynical and judgmental of our leaders because we think, man, this is whack. I could do a way better job. Then do it. Ask how you can serve your leader. Ask how you can help make something better. If you have ideas, lovingly suggest it. Because guess what? That's probably what your strength is, may not be a Fope's strength. Sorry, Fope. Love you, man, but... So it's really important for us to remember that like leadership really doesn't start up here. You don't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be an amazing leader. No, you show up to things like this, you stay hungry, you stay faithful, you do things in excellence, and you continue to strive, and you don't know where God will take you. And let me tell you, serving in a church has gotten me jobs, okay, in corporations. My volunteer work where I served for free outside of church, okay, on top of that, that also got me opportunities, and it taught me how to be a leader because I saw there was a need in our community. I said, hey, I want to start this program for East African kids who are marginalized, who are new to Canada. So I asked them, can I do this? They're like, yeah, sure. You just need to, if you have something to contribute, do it. Don't hold back. That's a gift to the world that you don't even know that you have. So serve well by giving well and like give your time well. So last thing is that I want you guys to think about how you can engage in positive actions, right? What are the things that you can pray about? If you really feel passionate about this ministry and your church, ask how you can serve. And maybe you don't know how to serve. So brainstorm some ideas. I always say this to my students, hey, if you have something to contribute, I want to hear it. Because guess what? I'm old and I'm out of touch. So help me out, right? Maybe even form a group. Like, for example, if you see something wrong in your community, or you see, like, for example, let's say, like, this place was really messy and you came, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much garbage in here. The way that you can actually make a difference and how you can lead well is actually by starting to pick up the garbage that's around there and cleaning up without no one telling you. Does that make sense? Sometimes leadership is not that. Leadership is servanthood. And to serve well is to do little things without being asked to do it. Like, I love when there's people who just, like, hey, I saw that, like, it's like you go outside and someone has shoveled your driveway or like cleaned off your car. Okay, this is such an adult thing. But you're like, wow, thank you. Like, I didn't have to ask, I didn't have to beg, and I don't have to because you just saved me from like 20 minutes of complaining about the snow. But there's different ways where we can show up and we can serve. Like, I love that, like, I encourage students at our church. So I'm an associate pastor at Journey Church, and I oversee small groups and youth. And I always say this, I'm like, hey, if you have free time and you want to come help me, I'm never going to say no. Because guess what? We are better together. We can do things, we can do far more stuff together than just by ourselves. So if you have a passion, and maybe you're like, okay, I want to serve in the worship team. And let's say maybe your vocals are not there yet. I can always say, I knew it was you, see? One of the things is that you can still come, you can still serve. There's so many ways to serve that you don't need to have the mic. Does that make sense? Like your faithfulness and how you show up and how you serve what's here is going to make the difference. And so like the guy that we saw at the beginning of the video, him dancing and being crazy. Imagine, you could be making a difference. You could start a program here at BP. You could do different things. You can contribute ideas that actually make a difference in the lives of people that you didn't even know. But it just requires you to say yes and to like jump all in and to serve well. So how you serve is how you lead. And that's my talk.